Digital migration was controversial even within the media itself, and one wonders, since we all ended up migrating anyway, what was the hullabaloo about?
Very good question indeed, and thank you for the opportunity to put things in perspective. The problem of digital migration was all around the question of trust and how the government was handling the process. We were moving in a way that the established broadcasters were not being listened to. A lot of infrastructure had been put in place by Royal Media Services, Nation Media Group, Standard Group, and actually a number of other broadcasters who have transmission sites across the country, but who had no opportunity to have a say on the digital migration timetable. The digital migration timetable was being forced because of commercial reasons. But we are happy with how it turned out. We all went to court, and out of the court process, the African Digital Networks Limited, ADNL, was born. It is an independent signal distributor bringing together broadcasters. Currently there are two members, that's the Nation Media Group and the Royal Media Services in ADNL. We're sure it will grow into the biggest signal distributor. Our biggest doubt was on the credibility of our content, because we also, at the time when the migration was on trial phase, interference with our content, where you would see on either Citizen TV or NTV, you would see pop-ups of commercials being inserted by other signal distributors. This was wrong, and we questioned on a day, on a high noon of news that probably the government will not be comfortable with, what would happen? We know it happened in Russia some times back. Actually, it was the USSR when it was dissolving. What happened with the Konstantin, which is the main broadcaster at the time? They ran ballet and music. People did not watch the revolution. In Russia, they did not see Boris Yeltsin climbing the tank, because music was played and ballet. We do not want a ballet situation in Kenya. That's why we wanted. The revolution will be televised. Not just a revolution, but news about uncomfortable subjects like corruption.
But you know, there are those who, and I remember at the height of this, we were off air for a while, and then eventually we came back on air. We were trying to prove a point, but there was a feeling of what did we expect from the public? Was this public supposed to see the gap, understand that media plays, you know, a valuable role in informing them, and sort of rise up in arms with us, maybe wave a placard or two for the Fourth Estate? But it seems like the public did not really catch on when it comes to what we were advocating for. Did we also fail in our communication of the issues?
The switch off was not aimed at the public. The switch off was our protest to the government and to the signal distributors that had been licensed to carry our signal without our consent. That is why we pulled the plug and said, you cannot carry our content without our consent. You need our consent to carry this copyrighted material and distribute it and sell your digital boxes using our content. So the public was the proverbial grass. The switch off was not really aimed at inciting the public.
Eric?
First of all, the media, again, you captured it very nicely, the profile, the scope, the place of media in our society. But what you do to it, what media does to it more often, sometimes, power corrupts. Media has a lot of power, and sometimes you can see it tends to abuse it. For instance, the digital migration, it was just a fiasco. Because of this, first, it was an international obligation. The International Telecommunications Union, and particularly the Regional Commission for Africa here, committed that by June 2015, we will have migrated digitally. That was out of anyone's decision. So it wasn't like the government of Kenya was ramming down that decision, the throats of the local media. That's first of all the context. Secondly, it wasn't just the fact that people had invested in infrastructure for transmission and so on and so forth. The other thing was purely commercial interest, to the extent that media houses were trying to form consortiums or go alone to manufacture top boxes, and people had made orders in China and they're going to make crazy losses. And you see, that's a purely contractual private arrangement that has nothing to do with government. So how it came out that now it was being expressed in terms of freedom of media, that the government is being repressive. I think that was a complete distortion of the context of the situation, of the facts. And I think it will still go down as one of those fiascos that we just have to regret. Secondly, anyway, Charles.
Yeah, I was going to say that for me the digital migration was one of the issues where I thought dialogue would have given a better result, because the media houses campaigned. Maybe there were commercial reasons involved, but at the same time nobody in their right mind would dispute that they deserved to get what was on the table. So the government took a hard line, the media took a hard line, and I thought, I wish that we could have a situation where we can negotiate. I think it's a travesty that a Chinese company ends up getting so much, whereas a local company doesn't get. But here is a situation where, nobody wanted to talk. And we ended up with what we had. So I have a lot of mixed feelings about the digital migration that happened. But at the back of my mind, what I have no doubt about was if people talked more, we would have had a better result.
Harun, unfortunately you're winding up, so I must press you to just respond to the question that I will put to you, which is how the media covered former CS Anne Waiguru in the wake of the NYS scandal. She said that we made it personal. It was about her. It was about not liking her. It was not about the facts. And there were a lot of cartoons that ran that quite frankly sexualized her. You had the cartoon of her basically holding a whip and in some sort of Catwoman suit and correlating that to the NYS scandal. What the cartoonists meant at that point, leave to your imaginations, but the fact is that it was run by dailies in this country. What did you think about how we covered her?
I think corruption is a big thing that's now being covered by the media. Focus is there. Whether community or mainstream media, I think they are doing a good job in terms of holding the government accountable. But my problem is that the angle that they took was more political. What I was looking for is over 700 million shillings has been misappropriated. What does it mean to the Kenyan economy? Can you make me imagine the effect, the impact of that amount to our country? That is what we are looking for, which never came out. What came out was that who was behind Waiguru. It was highly politicized, so that there was the whole issues of the container, but the content was missed. So basically, again, the issues of investigation is what again comes in, and therefore for me, there lacked issues of substance in terms of investigation, the consistency and follow-up, but all the same, it made the president act in terms of, reshuffle
and
the cabinet and all that kind of thing. But I think one thing that we need to look at is how well can we be able to bring facts out in terms of demonstrating the effect of corruption.
Fair enough, Udwak.
Yes.
I think Harun is right to point out the fact that there's very little content to it. But I think what galvanized the media, and you must remember that various media campaigns, and it's interesting that you single out Anne Waiguru, because I do believe there's a sustained campaign against the former Interior Cabinet Secretary, Joseph Olelenku, when the attacks, the Al-Shabaab attacks just got out of hand, and you could see you talk about Anne Waiguru in her catsuit and a whip. I mean, he had a his chef's cap, right? And I think, this is where the media, editorial writers took a stand and said enough is enough. And part of the reason why I believe to some extent Ms. Waiguru has a point, that the reporting was personalized, but she wasn't behaving like anybody else. Okay, her name was in the papers day in, day out, on stations day in, day out, and she was intransigent in refusing to step aside. And what you had where people had been adversely mentioned, they were either asked to step aside, there was fact, or something happened. But here you had someone, associated with a loss of 700 million shillings, and nothing happened, and nothing happening, and this bullish response, which needed interrogating.
Eric?
The loss of 700 million shillings, by all accounts, is a very serious issue. I mean, how we address that loss is where the issue is. But more particularly, just as we've been speaking about women in media, I think we should just, and the two-thirds rule and so on and so forth. I think we should go beyond that point and see whether we have understood the whole idea of gender equality, the personhood of the woman, all right? So that we live in a society which still tends to allocate women certain subordinate roles and sexualize them, you know, like gratuitously. For a woman, in any discourse, her gender comes up as some sort of liability, very, 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 very immediately. Yeah, and most importantly, sexual references begin to arise very quickly in very unpalatable terms, right? So I think there is a valid complaint that women in power are not covered with the justice that they are entitled to. Women in power are covered. You can see a lot of innuendo in terms of who they are associated with, which male sponsor, as it were, is associated with her success or her troubles, and so on and so forth. And I think we should walk away from that. We should start seeing women as equal, autonomous human beings. All right? And so that they can face the merits or the demerits of the facts that are confronting them as a person. For instance, if Linus was the minister and 700 million shillings disappeared, I doubt very much that all those innuendos would have arisen. You would just have said, where is the money? Where is the money? Why aren't you resigning? But because a woman was involved, we immediately collapsed. We collapsed.
There's an example from South Africa. We know that there's this hashtag on Twitter, Zuma must fail, Zuma must fall, and that came from the fees must fall. And this had to do with his sacking of what appeared to be a competent finance minister. And why is that finance minister alleged to have been sacked? Because he might have interfered with one of, Zuma's alleged, extramarital affairs. So it does go both ways. To be fair to Ms. Waiguru, she does have a point to complain about personalized reporting. And you see the personalized reporting when it's extended to her family or her status and things like that. But when men, have the dalliances and things like that, in some cases you do see it. The former Information Minister Raphael Tuju, was in the media, when his wife, was alleged to, have been cheating on him, and then one of her alleged lovers was, died under unclear circumstances. So let's be very clear. I think the issue in this instance with Ms. Waiguru had to do with the fact that she was bullish, that she fought back.
And women should be humble.
Women should be humble, but look at Mr. Olelenku. When we, said enough, we don't want a chef running our security. Clearly, he can't take care of us. Give us somebody who can.
Yeah, well, on the issue of the content of NYS, I don't know what more we could have covered. We said where the money was transferred to, which accounts, who they belong to, where it moved to from then on, how it was divided, how the money was spent, which plot in Roslyn it went to buy. We covered everything. What Harun is asking for is, what does 791 mean to the economy? That's just one story out of the thousands of stories that were written about NYS. But another impression I want to correct is that these are not political issues. The media reviews about NYS, then politicians, being politicians, jump onto it and go and start talking about it in rallies. So therefore the story develops a life of its own and grows. Eurobond was a media revealing what has happened, and then politicians, being who they are, jump onto it. So let's not have a situation where it looks like it is the politicians setting the agenda and the media just following. You always break the stories, politicians jump on board, but just because they are newsmakers, we have a right to cover them. Then we cover, follow-up. But we did cover those issues. We went to great depth and detail.
Michael. It's the media that brought out the NYS issue. At what point did it get personal? I think it dragged on for too long, like she's saying. The people who were responsible were too bullish. So things had to take the route that they took. If she had, vacated office earlier, I don't think it would have gotten where it got.
All right, I'll come to you all for a final round of comments. There has been concern that government is infiltrating newsrooms, left, right, and center. Eric, your hands are long and stretch far, apparently. I just want to get your final views. We're getting into an election season in earnest. Are you at all concerned about the state of the media and its competence to be objective and cover this election objectively? And also because we have come against the background of violence. We have seen a lot of statements by political leaders that have been seen to be insightful, etc. What is the media's role in remaining objective, in building cohesion and national unity, and also just calling out people when they need to be called out? Final round of comments, Linus.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to a very eventful 2016 news-wise, and then heading into the election in the 2017 August. And my wish is to see media houses, individual media houses, cleaning up, everyone cleaning up their act. I think Michael and Dr. Mangi did earlier speak about ethics. That's one of the key concerns that I still hold to this moment, because I get worried with the tone of coverage sometimes. The kind of questions that we have reporters asking out there, or even anchors in our studios. And I would wish to see media houses, self-regulation is very important, but first internally. Do you have, for example, editorial guidelines that guide everything that you do? I had a stint, just like Udwak did with the BBC, a place where everything on earth you can find a reference to in their books. Nothing is left to chance. But how do you operate in media houses currently? I think we are very, very casual on editorial policies. I don't think all of us have written editorial policies that can be referred to when you're saying you're covering a political rally. This is what guides it. I think we need to actually understand and move in a way to address that space of regulating our coverage and actually governing our coverage of events. I'm looking forward to a very peaceful election and peaceful campaigns.
All right. Michael.
Like Linus has said, professionalism for me is very key. I believe in sticking to the rules. I love the rules that have been formulated by somebody else, but the ones we have formulated ourselves. Internal, like you said, editorial policies are key to a functioning newsroom. Most newsrooms need to go back to the basics. You've spoken about a hand somewhere. I've personally not seen it. 2017 is not the first election that we will be covering. When those instances, do happen, we, enforce ourselves to certain guidelines. I think during the 2013 election, we did actually ascribe to following certain rules, and we did do that well. When it comes to covering equal coverage of, both sides, because there'll be the ruling government and then there'll be the opposition. You've just said the opposition is dominating, so I don't know how government is infiltrating. If it were, then they should be having a field day. You just said they're not. And like Linus has said, I believe we should be able to have a smooth 2016-2017.
All right.
From a media perspective.
Yeah, I think two things. Number one is that the 2019 election was a very good election in terms of the performance of the media, and we had a very good election guide that we took over 3,200 journalists for 2 years through. And therefore, would say that in my own assessment, I would say that there was proper guidance in terms of the way they covered the election. And this time, we want to review that guide and see whether it is possible again to train some journalists to go through the guide to prepare them for the election.
Sorry, there were two things you wanted to say first.
Yes,
please.
Number two is the whole issue of now regulation, because already of the social media and the multiplicity of media players and the consolidation of media. Again, those are likely to have some impact in terms of the way the elections are likely to be.
All right, I'd love for you to go last.
Yes.
Okay, monopolizing this.
Well, the media and the government will always have a love-hate relationship, confrontational. They will never be best of friends unless you're in a one-party state where you have no choice. The government will always try and influence and control the media, although they will deny that. But at the same time, the government continues to be a very good source of information and material for the media to publish. But just to stress on the point of building the capacity of newsrooms and professionalism, you might not appreciate how difficult it is to get good writers. And you really struggle, and sometimes you're on your website and you read a story and you see some egregious mistakes and you cringe and you're hoping nobody else has seen it, and you ask, how could you write something like this? How can you say the woman was worried because his son fell into the well, and somebody says, but that is okay because it's a son, therefore then you realize, oh my God, this guy doesn't know, you know, and then you wonder, where do you begin with the training? So I think that professionalism and capacity should be something done continuously. I was happy when the Nation Media Group started this in-house college of training people, but that as characteristic of the nation, they dropped it. Just
no,
like
it's back.
Thank you. It's back. And I would encourage every media house to have a space to take interns and to train them and to retain the best, because getting good people is not easy.
Is it something also about the, you know, the
schooling system? If somebody went to Kajinga Primary School and ends up in somewhere, he will never be as good as somebody who got proper foundation.
Please don't go there. All right, Eric.
First, I think there is a vast opportunity for the media and government to collaborate on some two, for me, very important projects. One of them is branding the country. You see what happened that somebody tells CNN when they said that hotbed thing. I like the way the Kenyans of all stripes, including the media, rallied and said, no, this is a line beyond which we cannot proceed. But you see, how did this line become fuzzy? It became fuzzy because anything negative about Kenya goes. Our media has licensed it that way. We gatekeep locally for political purposes, but we don't gatekeep internationally to see how our brand is working. When you go out with a Kenyan passport, whether you are an editor at Nation or Kerich, you will be told you are a thief because all the stories coming out of Kenya is either terrorism or theft, right? And sometimes some of those stories are gratuitous, but they end up having an impact on us, and people evaluate us based on those stories. The slants. Is that the only thing that's happening in Kenya? Still, we're building a railway. It's almost in Nairobi. Nobody talks about it except if it's going to pass through a park or not. That's the only time you talk about that. Nobody talks about the 6 trillion in foreign direct investments that have been generated by a robust foreign policy involving the president engaging locally and abroad. But more importantly, we are going to next year. Our definition of fair and objective coverage is going to really be tested. Next year, there will be politicians in high-octane mode. Next year, there will be pollsters with their own issues. Next year, there will be social media complete inferno. And next year, there will be a campaign. I mean, we'll be moving towards a campaign momentum. Now, what constitutes fair and objective coverage? For example, you say the government's hand is everywhere and trying to mess up with newsrooms. We think that at all editorial desks, there is a lot of gatekeeping. That's why some stories just don't make it anywhere. Government thinks there is gatekeeping that is biased against them. And that if you're going to report against government for purposes of fair coverage means you give government enough space, you give opposition enough space. But the space given to the government is about scandals. And then the space given to opposition is about opposition talking about those scandals. So I don't see where the fairness is. I don't see where the fairness is there. So I think those stories, that definition of fair and objective coverage has to be reviewed. Has to be reviewed drastically. Secondly, I think that partnership, that collaboration, that engagement is necessary. You need to hear us. We need to hear each other, right? Most of the wasted energy that we've had, about that consultation about the security bill. Remember, the security bill has actually enabled us to turn around the security situation in this country. And all the complaints that they were brought on board eventually. And they were taken care of. And nobody has anything to fear about a better secured Kenya. But you see, the spirit of partnership would help us in things like digital migration, which ended up developing, a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and it was completely unnecessary. Yeah. So I think there is a scope for partnership, there's scope for accountability also. I think government wants to be accountable.
Okay.
Yeah. But how do you administer accountability as media? That is a question you need to ask yourselves. I think so far the approach has been very robust, but perhaps we want to look at the strategy itself and whether it's directed properly.
Okay, good work.
You accused me of hogging the space, so I have nothing to say. Actually, no. What it is that I agree with everybody on the panel. There were questions about how the media's handling the coverage of the 2013 general election. We did have the presidential debate, but we did miss things that we're now seeing with us. The Chickengate scandal, and various questions about, election materials. I would really love for us to build on lessons learned from the past, both 2013 and 2007, 2008. But what will be key will be, as everyone says, investing in people, whether it's training, whether it's onboarding. When people enter, you know, your newsroom for the first time, there should be an onboarding process. There should be on-the-job training, continuing training, sabbaticals. Go and refresh yourself. Go and learn, you know, things and bring them back to us. Investing in systems and processes. I'm not sure how many newsrooms, you know, actually have, you know, proper systems to manage both their content and the way they do things. But also, and you touched on this, linking to educational and training institutions. Because how many media leaders are frustrated when they receive a new graduate with a paper that says, I have a communications degree, I have a journalism degree, and then you put them in front of a computer and, you know, it's like, oh boy, I've got to start again. With you. I can't send you out. I need, you know, to take you aside for 3 months or so, or assign you to someone to mentor you. So all of those things will be critical as we lead up to the 2017 general election.
I thank you all for your views. My panel, Linus Kaikai, Chair, Kenya Editors Guild, General Manager, Nation Broadcasting Division, Michael Mumo, Editorial Director, Capital Group Limited, Harun Mwangi, CEO, Media Council of Kenya, Udwa Kamimo, Host Cheche, Charles Kerich, Editor, The Star, and Eric Ngeno, Director, Messaging, State House. From all of us, have a happy New Year.